Hey there everyone, my name is Adamantium. I hope everyone out there is feeling well. Um, Today I'm here to talk about my uh, my retrospective thoughts about the arrest that I encountered a couple of months ago now. I've been thinking about one of the things that PC Jackson said to me when they were basically walking me to the police car, to the squad car, um, and I kept saying to them, "I don't consent to this arrest. I don't consent to this arrest." And PC Jackson said, "We don't need your consent." And that kind of, I didn't know exactly how to address that. For one thing, that I had my hands behind my back in cuffs, and they were on either side of me, marching me towards the squad car. So this is the first time this has ever happened to me. So I was like, my brain was on overdrive. Um, but I never really thought in depth about the very fact that the arresting officer said to me in person, to my face, he said, "We don't need your consent." So one thing that might come to mind because of this is the possible question of, without violence and coercion, how do you gain jurisdiction over me? Without violence and coercion, how do you gain any authority? Can any police officer watching this answer that question? If you're not forcing me to do something against my will, which historically, as a free and democratic society, we have fought against the very idea of forcing people to do something. I mean, that's one of the whole things about the the alliance between America and this country, is that we had to kill Adolf Hitler. Pardon me. We had to kill Adolf Hitler because he was forcing people to do things against their will. He was mass slaughtering people, which was true. So why are we now doing the same thing? Think about it. We're not, I mean, the governments of this world aren't necessarily overtly fascist, but they are in much more insidious ways. Because the thing is, I mean, there's so many pictures that float around Facebook pointing out this duality, or it could be a false dichotomy, I don't know. But there's essentially there's a picture of the suicide nets outside the Foxconn factory buildings, and basically they're nets that are put there to catch people who are trying to commit suicide by throwing themselves out of a window. And then there's and under that it says suicide nets to catch attempted suicides by Foxconn workers. And then the next picture is a row of people on their iPhone 5s or iPads or whatever, some Apple product, and it says a row of people who are on their iPhones or using the iPhone 5. And it said the difference between these two things is that the Foxconn workers know they are slaves. But that's the thing, this culture doesn't do things overtly fascist. They're insidiously fascist. You know, we create things that the vast majority of the public don't know are happening. So, it allows the government and any corporate bodies that are attached to them and work for them and with them. It allows them to do things that they shouldn't necessarily be allowed to do. And what we find is that with the situation of my arrest, coming back from this whole tangent, he's essentially saying that we are not governed by consent. How can we not be governed by consent? If we're not governed by consent, then what are we governed by? Obligation? Is it, my country, right or wrong, sort of thing? Is that also applying to structural governmental power? That it's our government, right or wrong? Is it the whole, you got to do as you're told, sort of thing? Well, that's not democracy. I mean, even democracy has a certain element of fascism to it, but it's a case of where does the line get drawn? Where do we draw the line at what we do and what we consider moral and fascist behaviour? Is it fascist because it is, universally fascist? Or is it fascist because other people that we have labelled as fascist does it? Is it one rule for us and another rule for everybody else? So when a police officer says to you, we don't need your consent, they're essentially saying that their will constitutes what legitimizes, justifies and quantifies law. It's like the Judge Dredd thing. I am the law. That's what he says. Because with Judge Dredd, he considers himself and his will and his actions to be an embodiment of the law. It's almost like the religious claim of is goodness good because it is good, or is good because God says it's good? Does God's will dictate what is good and what is not? Not just that, there's some people claim, God is love, not just that God is loving, but God is love. Do our police officers and our police community support officers and civil enforcement officers and environmental enforcement officers, do they consider their will to dictate the law? Because if what PC Jackson said to me was true, that they don't need my consent, then how can we consider ourselves to live in a free democratic society? Because if you think about it this way, I'll paint a scenario for you, okay? I'm gonna say to you that, say for example, if I found you physically attracted enough to want to have sex with you, right? If I recognise my attraction towards you, does my will to want to have sex with you give me the right to have sex with you, regardless of whether you're consenting or not? Do I need your consent to make advances on you? Well, yeah, obviously. Otherwise, what is it? Rape. Now, say for example, I'm wearing some fancy dress clothes that certain established institutions have taught us to give a certain characteristic to me. If I'm wearing it, I am embodying some kind of authority. If I'm wearing that, does that now give me authority to to make advances on you, whether you consent or not? No, because that is still rape. Now, what if a few people had rung me up and said that you're acting in a suggestive way? People have witnessed you acting in a suggestive way, and not only that, but telling other people that you want to have sex with me. Does that now give me the right to approach you and make physical advances on you? No, because that is rape. Let's just say a few people ring me up and they swear on their mother's life that they heard them say that they want to have sex with me. Does that now give me the right? No, it doesn't. So, if you're a police officer and you supposedly get 5 phone calls of people making sworn statements that I'm saying certain things, what now gives you the right to arrest me virtually on sight? You haven't witnessed this yourself. You don't have any evidence. All you have is, let's just, for a moment, I'm just going to entertain the idea that 5 people did ring up Maidstone Police to complain about me. I'm just going to entertain this for just a moment. I don't for a second believe that it did happen, because how can I put my hand on my heart and say yes, it did happen? I don't know for sure. So let's just entertain that notion for a moment. Does that, if 5 people ringing me up to tell me that you want to have sex with me, if that doesn't give me the right to make advances on you, because all I'm doing is taking anecdotal testimony, not actual evidence, does that give me the right to make advances on you? No, that's rape. So, if you were that police officer, if you were PC Jackson, and if you received 5 phone calls from people telling me that I'm saying these really bad things, but not proving it, does that give you the right to arrest me? No. So what does that mean? It means that it was assault and kidnapping. Wasn't it? Assault and kidnapping. And here's the thing, right? Like I said to PC Jackson when I just got put in the car, that we live in a society where the onus is on the prosecution to prove guilt, or in this case, the onus is on the police to prove my guilt in order to legitimise an arrest. Now, I've gone through the different sections of PACE that I feel that the officers have breached, but if a police officer's will alone does not give them, the law is not the law because a police officer says so. They try and act like that sometimes. They try I've found this quite a few times, that when you're citing law to them, they're saying, "Look, mate, I'm telling you, it's an offence." That is a police officer trying to dictate what the law is purely by their own will alone. That's them trying to, dictate to you what the law is purely because they say so. They're not God. They're not Judge Dredd. They are not the law. Okay? So, can anyone explain to me why the arrest that I experienced, and there's video online that you can check to see the details of it. It's Maidstone Police Win and Fail, I think I've called it. Can anyone explain to me how that arrest was lawful and why it did not constitute assault and kidnapping? Can anyone explain that to me? Something to think about. Take care, guys.